You want to fight crime? Let's get dangerous.
And yes, it is. It is showtime once again. We made it to another Saturday. We made it past Halloween. So I'm hopefully everybody that's out there watching it had a happy Halloween, but didn't have that silver shamrock mask on during that special time. Because if you know what that means, you probably won't be here right now. But nevertheless, welcome to another episode from the Desto Small Press Publisher. I'm your host, Joe D. McPhee here. And we got somewhat of a interesting topic to go, to talk about here on the second part of the show. Hopefully we get a lot of people in because I need people's opinion on this more so than me going on kind of like a interesting talk / rant here. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and get the business end of things out the way here. Such as always, we have Stupid O'Clock. That's happened 1 hour into our show here. If we go into the second hour from the Desto Small Press Publisher, that is then followed up by Last Man Standing at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then you get a respite here. You get your Sunday free, and we do mean completely free here. And you wake up on Monday morning, you get up, you hit the 10 o'clock hour, you then tune back into the good old YouTube to see Nicholas Tockert with Nevermind the Furthermore. And let us not forget Comic Book Spectrum this upcoming Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I believe we are going to talk about, which one was it we're going to talk about? I forgot which cartoon series we're going to talk about here, but nevertheless, we're still on our Hanna-Barbera run here. But if you didn't catch this past week's Comic Book Spectrum, you missed a doozy here because we talked about Thundarr the Barbarian, and we did an actual comic book review on that show as well, and talk about some other Halloween type stuff. So it was a good show that you guys missed here. But nevertheless, we got a brand new one coming up this Thursday here. I'm trying to think which one we were going to talk about here. I remember Mightor, I believe it's going to be the Mighty Mightor. Was going to be the next Hanna-Barbera action comic related cartoon that we're going to talk about here. But nevertheless, we're here. It is Saturday, and with it being from the Desto Small Press Publisher this early in the show, everybody is waiting for it. It's like, well, Joe, what did you get this week? So, nevertheless, here it is. New comic book pickups for the week here. And for those who don't know, part of it is recorded, and we got a few extra goodies after the pre-recorded part of it. So here we go. With High Impact, Double Impact number 0. This is from volume 2. This is the 0 issue from number 2. That is going to be followed up by the Atom, or I should say the all new Atom issue number 4. And I think this is like one of the continuations of the Giganta story, because this version, I forgot I forgot his name, but Dr. Choi was dating Giganta in this series here, so this is a part of that particular sub story here. And then we got some Supreme Powers here, and the good thing about this is now I finally got a full run of Supreme Power. So we got another copy of issue 11, 10, issue 11. Finally, the issue that I was missing, issue 14, and another copy of issue 17. We got the Outsiders number 4. And then we're getting closer to completing JLA Paradise Lost. I'm only missing issue 1 of Paradise Lost now. Then we got X-Men number 15. Uncanny X-Men number 8. This is, I believe, is an extra copy of that. We got X-Men 16, X-Men 12, X-Men 11, X-Men 10, X-Men number 9, and then we got some good little freebies that came in because of the fact that I've been helping moderating other people's whatnot sales here. So I got a 15 center here, King of Kings. 15 center Del 4 color here. Then we got this is a 10 cent King of the Royal Mounted Del 4 color. And then we got a 25 cent Del Giant Walt Disney's Huey, Dewey, Louie Back to School. And we got Walt Disney Christmas number 6 from Del Giant 4 color, and there it is. And then I tried to get another complete run of Last Right. I know I have one coming from our favorite comic book pirate seller, but I was trying to get another run of it real cheap here. So we got $297, $298, and $299, and Last Right's in it with Daredevil 300. Now this should make a fool Richardson happy because this is her cover that she did for Black Panther World of Wakanda, and I do know the artist who did this cover, so that was kind of cool here. And then we got giant size X-Men Storm, which is pretty nice. And then we got X-Men number 3, X-Men number 4, and X-Men number 5. And then we're getting closer to completing this run of Spider-Woman here. I believe this is from the 2015 series. This is the harder to get because of Sydney Moon here. Spider-Woman number 3, part of the Spider-Verse set here. This is a first printing of that. Then we got another copy of Spider-Woman number 2. I believe this is from the 2023 season. The 2023 run. I believe that's volume 6, if I'm correct here, of Spider-Woman. Then we got another free comic book day, Spider-Man and Venom. And then with this one here, this would mean that the only issue that I'm missing so far in the most current version of Catwoman, which is volume 5, is 68. And then I will have all of them here, but this is Catwoman 66. Then we got Future State Catwoman number 2. I believe the only one I'm missing out of that is Future State Catwoman 1. We got another copy of Scorch number 1. Then we got Jughead 150. I noticed that this had like the ink, the cup stain right there that pulled a lot of the lettering and everything off. But outside of that, it was pretty decent. And then we got a Jughead 175. And then a Jughead 195. And then the last book for new comic book pickups for the week is Archie Giant World of Jughead, and where he's at summer camp, he's asking for more for his mother and father to send more food because there's not enough food in summer camp. But there it is. That is new. The pre-recorded new comic book pickups for the week. If there's any more that comes in between now and showtime, we will probably run those live here. But for now, we're going to send you back to the studio here for we continue on our episode from the Desk of Small Press Publisher. And there you have it. That was the pre-recorded portion of it. And since we got a few extra books this afternoon, we're going to go over the fact that I got another copy of Wonder Woman 163. Why this one more so? Because this is a second retelling of the origin of Giganta. And this retelling is a lot different, mainly because the ending and everything was really, really different. And they made Giganta blonde in this one. So she's not the redhead that we, grew to know and love in cartoon continuity here or in the original origin that was done in issue number 9. It follows the same type of origin about Dr. Zool evolving an ape and everything, but instead of it being a redhead, in this version, she was a blonde. So it was kind of like one of those weird aspects here. And then we got a giant size Lois Lane 95 here. This is pretty much kind of like reprints a lot of the original stories from early on. It's like this, they said the featuring the strange lives of Lois Lane. So we got the story about where she became like Lois Lane and Madam Hyde, her being a super brain here, Lois being a slave girl, Lois Lane being like an old hag, and then the Widow in Black, and then her becoming like a superwoman of Metropolis here. So it's 6 different stories all in this. I think this was like an 80-page giant, which was 25 cents here. The bad thing about it is like the spine and stuff is got like a little bit of chip in the spine and everything, but outside of that, it's a decent copy of it. Then we got Fighting Marines 110, 114, and 120. And that pretty much deals with all of the new comic books for the week here. These will be going to storage next week, but I don't think we're going to have them for new comic books for pickups for the week for the following week and everything here. And my storage trips might end up coming to an end for the season here, depending on how the weather stays. If it still stays above like 40 degrees here, I will still be going to storage every Saturday, making certain that everything gets in order. It's taken a lot longer to get all these comic book titles in order in the runs that they're supposed to be in. I looked at my Captain America box and I didn't realize that there were so many different volumes of Captain America. It's just the more that I go through the different stuff that I got, the more I get to the point where, sometimes comic book collections become unruly. But the major things here is like the runs that I do care about, they're already been done. Like all the Wonder Woman stuff has been done. They most of them have been rebagged and board. Some have not. The X-Men stuff have been rebagged. Well, the Uncanny X-Men stuff have been bagged and board. We haven't really touched the X-Men as of yet. Which, when I say X-Men, I'm talking about from the Jim Lee 1993 series to present. Those haven't been rebagged and board and all the nice and pretty stuff here. But it is what it is for right now. It's just like it's eventually, once we get everything in short boxes and labeled, and where everything becomes easier to, find and get, to maneuver and put in, take out, put in, and get it organized. Because lately, like I said, I've been trying to complete runs, and once those runs are complete, when I get extras, or if I get extras, it's just easy just to drop them in the boxes if there is space for them. So I'm actually learning not to overcrowd those boxes anymore. I'm learning the hard way, because I used to, it's like before I was getting all the issues in order, I would just put volumes of like take Spider-Man volume 1 to like volume 5 was all in one box until I completed volume 1. I completed volume 2. Once I got to volume 3 and 4 complete, that short box was already done. I had to take like all the other volumes out and try to find another box to put them in. Same thing for things like Justice League. The Justice League America, I think it's like volume 3 that is more like that, as opposed to like, volume 1. I only have like a handful of issues from volume 1. Volume 2, I'm almost quite certain I got a complete run of that. Volume 3, I'm missing a few issues but then they went from Justice League America, and then it had Justice League, and I have the full volume 1 of that and most of volume 2, and that doesn't, that almost takes up a short box, let alone until we get into like things like Justice Society and stuff to that magnitude. So it's the titles are astounding in that aspect here. But enough of that. Let's go ahead and move on with the agenda here. We're now, as far as updates and accountability here, I am currently working on page number 7 for page 7 of a story in issue number 3 of The Legends of the Giantess Slayer, which means that I'm on the last 2 pages of that. Once I finished with the graphics, I go ahead and get that stuff lettered. I put together issue number 3. And yes, issue 1 will be ready by C2E2. I want to guarantee that. What I would like to have happen is shortly after that, I complete Primetime Saturday Night number 6. So that way we got that going here. And then since we're at the winter season here, I'm going to actually have time to actually get back to the drawing board and draw the Amazonia 8 as I promised here. But outside of that, that's pretty much everything that's going on as of right now. I'm still looking for a hardcover book printer for the role-playing game. I still need to get an ISBN number for that gaming manual, and we might forego another Kickstarter. When I say forego, I mean leaving it alone, and we're just going to do it as a raw launch. And when I say a raw launch, it means that we're going to get so many hardcovers printed up, and we're not worrying about print runs at this point here. We're just going to get enough to do a good sample size before we do the bigger print run of the gaming manuals and everything. Because eventually, if people pick up on the role-playing game for Primetime Saturday Night, it is feasible to do a deluxe bundle where you get the gaming maps, actual figurines of the wrestlers and stuff to that magnitude here. But first thing first, we got to get the manual out. We got to see how people like it and go from there. So that brings us to the updates, the end of the updates and everything, which brings us to tonight's topic here. And it looks like, depending on how you guys react to this, it might be a short night here. And one of the good things about tonight, even if I ran long, tonight is the night that we fall back, so we get an extra hour worth of sleep. So my East Coast viewers, at 2:00 in the morning, they will be back at 1:00 on Sunday. And, us everywhere else, it's like we got extra time, except for those that are watching me in Arizona. You don't get the extra hour worth of sleep because you don't observe daylight savings, but that's okay. But tonight's topic is the rough road to success in comics. Now, for those who may not have watched Comic Book Spectrum this past Thursday, I did a review for this book right here, Sleeping Betty. Now, if you watch that review, it may have seemed rather harsh of a review here. But the thing about it is that we wasn't really bad mouthing the book. However, there is a part of the process of creating a title that has to be adhered to. So we talked about a lot of the editing aspects of it. And the thing about it is the storytelling was there. The concept is there. everything is meshing up pretty well with what is trying to be presented to us. However, a lot of us, oh, I shouldn't say a lot of us, the majority of us that's on that panel felt that it could have been presented better only because of the pacing of the story. Now, I do have to do a bit of a retraction here. Hey, there's Aaron. I see Aaron is here. There's Aaron. I do have to do a bit of a retraction from the Thursday show. The retraction is the end, the last page. I misread the last page to a scotch degree. And when I say a scotch, it's just more along the lines. The partner did not specifically point out Betty as being the vigilante. He pointed out that the vigilante was a woman, and the other police of his police partner was like, "How do you know it was a woman?" And how it's like, how do you know all this information and everything? Which, again, even misspeaking, even in that minute detail, does change the aspect of, is it a big enough cliffhanger or not? For me, it's not. I read into it a little bit more than what I should have, but when I actually go back and look at it from the point of view of somebody who have never read it and read it word for word and took it literally, it was not that big. Oh, I have to get the next issue moment. I still feel the way that I feel on Thursday, which is the page before, where the partner who was making the aha moment of, it's definitely a woman, when he coming around the corner, it's like, what happened? And you see the main character Betty standing over a choked out corpse. That should have been the cliffhanger, because he doesn't realize that she's a killer. But I'm not going to go over the story again. I'm not going to rehash it, because if you want the review, you could go back and watch Thursday's Comic Book Spectrum for that here. But I do like the concept of this title, Sleeping Betty. In a way, is a nice attempt to have a series where the main character is a cross between Freddy Krueger and Dexter. And when we talk about Dexter, we talk about Dexter, the TV series, the serial killer that only kills serial killers, Dexter. It's an interesting attempt to create that here. Oh, she runs in and skids to a halt. It's like, what did I miss? Oh, you missed new comic book pickups for the week, but I also had to make kind of like a minute retraction here, Elaine. And that minute retraction was, he did not specifically stated that Betty was the vigilante. He only stated that the vigilante was a woman. So he didn't out Betty in that last page, but he asserted himself enough that he knew enough that the vigilante was a woman, and the partner was still reacting. How do you know? How do you know that the vigilante is a woman? And he comes back to say, it's like, well, a man wouldn't have left the scene without having any trace. It would have been a lot messier. It'd be a lot messier of a scene here. Yeah, it could change things, but it's still not the cliffhanger that would make me be like, oh, I got to get the next story. I still feel the same way that I feel that the page before, because he didn't see what actually took place while he was taking care of something else, of what Betty actually truly did in that state. That to me was in the story there. And it would have been like, oh, it's like, even though Betty admitted that she freaked out when she saw him doing the other thing, when he first when she first bring into that dream state for this particular case, he doesn't know what's going on. He was he was pinned down by two other assailants, and she's just going to town. So to me, it's kind of like that was your cliffhanger moment when he finally comes around. It's like, well, what happened? That's like, is everything okay? What happened? That would have been the cliffhanger moment for him to be like, okay, he needs to discover what she can really do in this dream state, as opposed to going back to the diner and having that conversation. It's like, well, what are we going to do about the vigilante, this, that, and the other? Nobody has any clue who it is. Like, well, she's probably going to do this, that, and the other. How do you know it's a female? That conversation just throws everything off here. That's another problem that I have with that last page. Yeah, he's asserting that it has to be, he's trying to cover his track to say a woman could not, it had to be a woman because of the simple fact that it was not a messy scene. It would not been as obvious. A man would have just did what they did and just left everything the way that it is. A woman would be more meticulous. Well, at least that's the idea of what he was trying to state here. And she was shorter. She was shorter than all the victims and everything. So it's kind of like it's kind of like where I was going with about the topic for tonight here, about how it is a rough road to succeed, to have success in comics, or to succeed in comics, to success in comics here. Great concept, but the development. And I wanted to talk more tonight about the development of comics from the standpoint of small press publishers, independent publishers, hobbyists. The fact of the matter that editing is key. And I want to get to the point where people stop thinking as editing as proofreading and spell check. You're going to have to partner up with somebody who have written stories or understand the aspect of storytelling. Sit down and read what you're trying to create, and really buckle down and say, this is a good concept, but it missed the mark here, missed the mark there, missed the mark there, because of this person's reaction would not be genuine at this point, or you're moving too fast here. Your readers would be like, well, why didn't they do this instead of that here? And the one major thing that, Elaine, that we talked about towards the tail end, after I realized it, we don't know where it's set in. If it's a small town, it makes sense for the whole diner scenes, for the two detectives to talk to Betty about cases. It makes sense. But in a metropolis, oh, that's against protocol. That's beyond the scope of everything here. And Aaron was saying, yeah, the story needs to move along decently, and that's the key thing. And that was the other problem that I had with this. This is only 16 pages. And I'm going to get on that other aspect to that point in a few moments here, because to me, in this day and age, as either an independent publisher, a small press publisher, a self-publisher, or somebody that's just doing it as like, a hobby here and there, there's going to be a certain thing that I'm going to bring up as far as price point, and the fact that you're asking people to buy this as escapism. And this is supposed to be one of the, if I could say, cheaper forms of entertainment than anything else here. When people go out to Barnes and Noble to buy a novel, on average, they go out thinking that, I'm about to pay anywhere between $10 to $25 for the average novel, unless it's going on one of these paperback clearance type deals where it's anywhere between $5 to $10. But we'll get back to this in a second here about price points, because I'm not trying to embarrass this particular individual, but I just using it to illustrate a point here. And like I said, I'm myself, as far as my overall purchase, I'm not disappointed. I'm going, it's not that shabby, but it could be better. And the fact that they're asking for critiques is one of the reasons why I'm going through this, because it's like, if I, how can I put this? When Comixology first took on Amazonia and they first took on Primetime Saturday Night, I got criticism up the yin yang. But in that criticism, I found out that people really like what I was doing. People won't take the time to criticize. And when I say criticize, I talk about constructive, not decorative. We don't want to degrade anybody, but we want to be critical enough to be constructive to help them build. They were from the co-founder and other people in that company. I took that criticism and I ran with it. I ran real hard with it. Why? Because they saw there's potential there. They saw I enjoy this. You kept it at a decent price point for me to really get into it and like it. And I don't mind paying $3.50 for something like this, considering that most of my counterparts are charging $5 to $10 for theirs. When I did Primetime Saturday Night at a $5 price point for a 50-page book, they're up there, it's like, is this a graphic novel? I was like, no, that's just one issue. And then I have people come back and say, it's like, okay, here's my criticism about this. One, you might have to take a look at the lettering again. Two, you have to take a look at the costumes and everything, because again, people don't really wrestle in heel boots. I get it if it's supposed to be quote unquote fantasy here, but you got too many roots in the real, in the realistic aspects of wrestling. They don't wear, high heel boots. You might want to change, aspect of those costumes. Things like that helps make the book better. As much as, your ego might get dinged, if you really look at it and be like, you know what, you got a point there, or that could be a minor change, I could go ahead and make it. And the more people dig it, the more people get into it, the more that they like it, the more you have to keep them there and keep them hooked. And I like I said, I appreciate that type of stuff. And the reason why I'm mentioning Sleeping Betty again is that, you always try to pay it forward. And I've tried to pay it forward for those who really want the criticism. And I felt bad on Thursday that I misspoke about that last page. I really felt bad because I thought he outed her in that last page, but he didn't. So that was the key thing here. Southside curve stuff. She's still talking about what I did in issue number 5. Issue 5 with the crew. The all powerful Southside curve stomp. And to be quite honest here, I had to show Elaine exactly why the move works, why the move actually works, and why, and explain to her how it could be actually done. But if it gets messed up, somebody is seriously injured. And yeah, she's saying that one was fun. Yeah. I mean, but books like that allows you to be creative. So like for tag teams, you could be creative with moves and everything to that magnitude. And all this that I'm talking about right now flows into the point that I'm making about the rough road. It's a very rough road because when you're in this independent or self-publishing or small press publishing or hobbyist type deal, you have to spend a lot of time in development. It's not always going to be like the first idea is the best idea and you're running with it. That first idea have to be developed to the degree where you make it a universe. You can tell one story and be like, oh, that's one story, but what happens when people are into it? When people start asking questions like, well, what's her background? How does she know about this type of stuff and all this other types of questions? If you didn't think about it beyond that first issue or beyond that first story that you're telling here, you're setting yourself to disappoint. That was one of the reasons why with Amazonia, I was happy that I road mapped 3 story arcs. There is a reason why I started out the first story arc with her not knowing her mother's side of her mother's side of the family and her actual heritage. There's a reason for that. By the time we get to story arc number 3, it becomes more of like a redemption arc for multiple characters in the series. And it kind of becomes more along the lines like, oh, this small little metropolis city that's in the middle of the United States now have this state of the have to have this state of the art kind of science forensic team that are made up of very unique individuals. And the fact that it doesn't always have to be revolving around Elisa. And seeing how that comes about and how the Angel Falls Police Department changes because of that is a story within itself. But like I said, it's going to be a redemption arc for at least 2 characters. One of those characters will not be introduced until the tail end of the second story arc, because she gets brought in to kind of be somewhat of the muscle that Elisa is while she's away. But nevertheless, the point that I'm bringing out is I thought about the universe, and the more I keep thinking about that universe, the more I have to expand on how each character is, their motivations, how they would look at the world, why they feel the way about the world and all this other stuff to make it cohesive. So when I did issue number 1 of Amazonia, I didn't just write one issue. I literally wrote the first 3 issues when I started drawing issue number 1. By the time I got to issue number 2, I already did the first 8. Right now, I am drawing issue number 8. And I need to finish scripting out issues 11 and 12. So I'm always working ahead because I'm constantly developing the universe around this. And as I draw, I might see things that it's like, you know what, that's going to be a problem, telling the story. I need to finagle it and get it to work and explain later on about why certain things are the way that it is. And then there's certain subtleties that I bring in with Amazonia here. And that's one of the reasons why, I'm not picking on this book, but I'm saying everything to say to kind of help Mr. Simon, who is the writer of this book, think the way that most creators would think in this case here. He got a good story. He got some good, if I could say, the story has some teeth in it. It will hold on to you. But the thing about it is, I don't feel like it's developed enough. He's rushing through it. Sometimes it's a good time to know when to speed up, and there's another time to know when to slow down. And at 16 pages, you're going full steam ahead. Now, mind you, 16 pages, that could work for a Marvel or DC book, but you have to be mindful. You're not Marvel and DC. People don't know your characters. You got to give them more. Which brings me back to the point that I was about to make here. But when I say you got to give them more, for 16 pages, for the amount of money that I paid for it, some people may be like, I'm not going to get the second issue because it costs too much. Other people will be like, oh, I like it. I might become a fan of it, but I might wait until I could actually afford it a little bit better. Now, like I said, I'm not putting him on blast. Don't get any of this twisted here. But I always look at price point, and I know everybody cannot play the long game. I get it. And what I mean by the long game, people have to make their money back on their investment right away. So what I'm about to get ready to show is this. I thought, okay, there we go. If you can see right here, and let me do it this way for you guys can see it. I don't think you guys can see it clearly here. So what I'm going to do, let's zoom it up. Whoops, I went too far. There we go. As you can see here, I paid $14.75, and that includes shipping and tax here. So in essence, I paid $10 for a 16-page comic. If I was to go to a comic book convention, on average, people are paying $10 for something that is like it's like, I wouldn't say highly overrated or anything to that matter, but it's highly marked up. And when I say highly marked up, because, oh, we got this known cover artist to do our cover, or we got this known artist to do the interiors. So we have to drive the price up for a 16-page book or a 12-page book just to cover costs, because everybody has to get paid. I get that. But here's the problem with that. If you're playing this very, 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 I need to get in and get out, your price point can stop people from even looking your way and noticing your books. You know, a $10 price point isn't bad if I was getting like, in most cases, a lot of people saying that Primetime Saturday Night should be a $10 book because, oh, I'm getting 50 pages. I'm getting my money's worth. I was like, yeah, you're getting your money's worth at $5. Yeah, I'm not making too much off of the printing cost of it. But my thing here is I'm looking at the longer term, and the longer term is as I do more issues and get more people into the series, and they see that, oh, we're about to get to issue number 10 or issue number 20 or issue number 50. People are well invested, and people will go back and look for the books that they missed. So they might go back to look for issue number 1. And if need be, because I'm that far down the line, there's nothing stopping me for doing a collective volume to make up that gap here. There's always going to be ways to make up that gap here. So Aaron is saying pacing is important, and it's like, whoa, yeah, $14.75 for 16 pages. And that reaction right there is quite normal. It's quite normal for a lot of people who are doing comic book reading on a budget. And also one of the reasons why it's like at Comic Book One is around, see, I'm not lying about price point, people. I'm not lying. I'm not going to steer you wrong on that. It's not my place to steer you wrong on it. Especially if you got something that is worthwhile. This book has something. It's worth the time and effort to at least pick up at issue 1 and see if you truly, truly like it. But what I'm looking at after that is like, okay, I paid $14.75, and this is through Whatnot. This is not through his Kickstarter. This is through a Whatnot. So this is after the fact that they went to Kickstarter, got their Kickstarter money and everything. They got the books out there, and boom, they're now out here for business, trying to get more people buying issue number 1, and you coming out the gate at a $10 price point for 16 pages. Yeah, you got to get a nicer book with $15. Yeah. And it's not even a nicer book. It's just more along the lines, you got to give more meat and potatoes. That's my whole thing here. Because one of the things that I dislike about comics nowadays, and considering the fact that some people are considering now a more of a renaissance period for independent comics, or I don't want to say self-published, but small press comics here. This is supposed to be our renaissance era, meaning that people are slowly trying to come back to us. If we're coming out here charging the astronomical amounts that Marvel and DC is charging for all these variant comics and everything to that magnitude, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I get it. Being a business is scary. Doing this for profit is scary. But you have to think longer term than shorter term. You got to think bigger picture as opposed to the here and now. And like I said before, and I said this over and over and over again in other episodes from the Desk of a Small Press Publisher, making a comic book is not cheap. And I want people to understand that wholeheartedly. On average, it takes anywhere between $3,000 to $7,000 to make one comic. And that's making the assumption that you hire a writer, you're hiring an interior cover artist, an inker, a cover artist, a colorist, an editor, a letterer. That's 7 people right there. And each have their own page rates and everything. Now, fortunately, a person like me is more of a one-man army. So I get around some of the stuff here, but I still hire a colorist. I still have an editor. I still hire cover artists from time to time. But even that takes money. It cuts down on my overall overhead, but it's still $3,000 to $7,000 for each issue. And that's before you get to printing cost. Before printing. Now, with that being said, that should give you a better idea of why people are complaining about theft of art and getting paid as an artist. Because a lot of times there is no guarantee that your book would succeed. There's no guarantee as far as it's concerned here. And then on top of that, you might work on a book and you sign your contract as a work for hire, and you don't have any rights or privileges to the artwork that you did. So you might, still have the files and stuff on your PC, or you might still have the Bristol boards and stuff, but you can't use it for anything else. And back in the day, you used to have to mail in those Bristol boards, and you lose all copyrights to it. If they're nice to you, they will keep them for so long, and then they will mail them back to you. Be like, okay, our need for these pages are no longer needed. Here you go. Keep them for your portfolio. It is not an easy task here. Just saying, as far as collecting goes, yeah. You're being more of a responsible comic. And that's the whole thing. I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm just trying to tell people the truth. People don't understand. It is not cheap to make a comic book. For those who are up here complaining about, well, Marvel and DC and Image, they should lower their prices and this, that, and the other. It's like, no, they should make better books because one, they're hiring people, they're paying their artists. Now they might be paying them lower wages now as opposed to what they did back in the past, especially in the 90s, because it's really unheard of in the 90s that you had millionaire comic book artists that they made. Liefeld would have been Liefeld if he didn't make over $1 million back that early in his career when he was 16 and 17, just for drawing comics. McFarlane, same thing. Jim Lee, same thing. These were $1 million arms working for Marvel, and Marvel took it for granted. So those are the types of things here. So I'm not trying to influence. I'm just telling people the 100% honest truth about this type of stuff. The business aspect of it is not as invisible or unthinkable like most people want to put it. And it's not as simplistic as, oh yeah, just get the right artist. It's like, yeah, you get the right artist, but guess what? If I went out to go and get Alex Ross, if I get Alex Ross and tell him, hey, I want you to draw this here, that page rate would be astronomical. Why? Because he's no longer that, oh, I'm a beginning artist working in comics. He has made a name for himself. He has worked for galleries now. So now he's on a gallery page rate. So that means you're going from paying maybe like from $50 to $100 a page to maybe like $1,500 a page. People can make a lot of money depending on how much they value the work. And the more credit that you have for work for other venues plays a factor for that. Yeah, it's like, so many people just want to make content promoting bugs, but where are the thoughts behind it? Why? Exactly. At least with this person, when I had that side conversation with him, he making the attempt to state the why. So that's the reason why I bought into it. And the fact that people know how I am. It's like being a writer for if I could say it in these terms here without being canceled or anything, for heroines more so than heroes. It kind of interests me to see what he's doing and wanting to be more encouraging. Because again, people come to me, it's like, oh yeah, I got this book and this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, meh. The concept is not there. The name of the title here is like Sleeping Betty and this, that, and the other. And then I see the wanted posters back there. I was like, oh, this could be interesting. This could, my original thought, and I didn't even told him, it's like, just by looking at the cover A and the title and everything, and just getting a sense of what you're trying to do just by the cover by itself, I was thinking sleeper agent. She doesn't know that she's a killer. And he was like, no, that's not what I was going for. And then he told me what he was going for. I was like, that could be interesting too. But I don't think his analogy was accurate either. I see the Dexter aspect of it, but the part that he dropped the ball on is that technically she kind of like Freddy Krueger. I don't know how deep her powers will go in that aspect here, but it was kind of unique to bring that aspect out, especially in issue number 1. And then Elena saying, yeah, absolutely. You often, have to ship via special couriers. Exactly. Yeah, Joe, but back in the 90s, though, that the comics would be worth more in the future. There's no guarantee for that. See, part of the problem is like with the aspect is like, well, the books will be worth more in the future. It really depends on the fandom for the books here. Perfect example. Let me turn back around here. Some people would look at Fighting Marines, for example. Some people would say these are very valuable books, and others would be like, nah, that's meh. It is what it is. It really depends on the fandom. Same thing with my girl right here, Wonder Woman. There is a reason why it's harder to get books in from the low 100s all the way back up to one. There are very few of them. Why? Because you have to look at the way that it was distributed and the way it was marketed and the way that it was sold here. Not a lot of people back then thought Wonder Woman was going to be as big as what it is today. So it's kind of like a hodgepodge and mishmash of, do you think this is going to be worth more, or is there a fandom big enough to encompass that? I feel the same way right now with comic book series such as like The Boys. I think, it might have legs right now, but who knows about 30 years from now, 40 years from now. Same thing with Invincible. Everybody is clamoring. It's like, oh, I need to get all these later issues of Invincible before they just dry up. And I was like, I'm looking at it, it's like, yeah, your fandom is driving up the prices now. But the question here is, does that character have staying power? Are you growing your fandom for Invincible? I don't see Invincible fandom growing. Same thing with The Boys. I saw it with Walking Dead, but now The Walking Dead has waned off. But yet, the Church of Batman is still the Church of Batman. We're getting more and more Batman fans. Superman fans have kind of tapered off. Wonder Woman fans, like I said, I saw an increase because of what Tom King has done. I see another increase once we got to Absolute Wonder Woman. But you got the main group of Wonder Woman fans that's still there, that's still trying to champion the fact that she's a worthwhile character. Not to say that what was going on in the 80s, in the 90s, because the 90s was a hodgepodge of a lot of good stuff coming out, and we're fighting tooth and nail to get notice here. Like, for example, 90s, we had Spawn. You still got people fighting over short print runs of Spawn, whether it be Curse of Spawn, Gunslinger Spawn. There's been all of these iterations of Spawn, and now you got this series called Scorch now, which again did not impress me. I went meh. At least I have copies of issue number 1 where I could say, hey, at least I read this. Or and like I had read issues of some of the others. I could say the exact same thing for Something Killing the Children. I went meh, only because of the simple fact that you went away from the whole point of the story of trying to figure out what was going around. If I could say, I don't want to say, I don't want to say inhabiting the children of this one town or possessing the children. You went away from that to talk about the hierarchies of the people that's hunting these entities. It made for a better story, but you went away from what was the focus that brought you to the point of asking what is going wrong with all of these kids. That to me is a major problem. And after reading a couple of issues of that, I'm like, you know what? If that fandom could get other people into it, it may have staying power more so than anything else here. But that's kind of like the key thing here. When I look at 90s books, and I even see it now, it's like when I see 90s Image, I cringed to a certain degree because a lot of the 90 Image books were being sold based upon the person who were drawing it or created it, meaning that there's really not all that much of a outcry for new Youngblood books. People bought it because it was Liefeld. There was no outcry for Fighting American because it was Liefeld that was drawing that book. There's no major outcry for Wildcats, even though Jim Lee drew it and created. It opened up the door for newer venues here, because if it wasn't for Image, we would not have the Terry Moores with Strangers in Paradise. We wouldn't have the Frank Cho with Liberty Meadows. That's with their babies before they actually became cover artists for Marvel and DC and doing other stuff here. 90s was a boom year for the independent self-publishing small press market. But the problem with the 90s is that it muddied up that same market too. Everybody and their grandmother somewhat had a series that was marketable, but was also fighting for the same spot because of the simple fact that we only had one distribution source, which was Diamond, for physical distributions. If you could not get into Diamond, you were kind of dead in the water. And that was a major problem here. But I do agree with the last part of your statement here about it's more about quality versus money spent, which is the key thing. Playing the long game, developing the series to the degree where the quality speaks for itself and the story content matters. I do wholeheartedly agree with that. Yes, but if you can, hit the like and subscribe if you like the content too. Also, the quality of the paper and the inks weren't exactly archival quality. Yeah, that's another factor too. And also, let's give a thumbs up. Thank you. Yeah, the various forms of quality, what sells to consumers is the question. Yep. Everybody is saying hello to Tat. I know Tat is in the house here. Yep, everybody is saying hello there. Yeah, please hit the notification bell. Yeah, I hope that I'm worth it. That's what I'm getting at. I really hope that everything is up to par and up to snuff for your likings here. Yeah, the 90s was too much flash, so to speak, and people bought for investment so that the publishers saw the money. And yeah, because think about it. The 90s, we saw a lot of die cast covers, a lot of foil covers, the 90s started the precedence of variant covers as a norm. Variant covers used to be kind of like that special added treat for those special events that happen. Like, for example, I still somewhere in storage still have my so-called gold X-Men Onslaught issue. Yeah, the one that I got duped into paying like $100 for back in the 90s. I still have it. And it wasn't real. It wasn't like real gold. It did have actual, I think it was like 16 karat gold woven into the cover. I still have it, but I look at it now, it's like it's worth nothing. It's really worth nothing. It was a novelty. Just like with a lot of the die cast covers, novelty. A lot of the foil covers back then, novelty. It's one of those things, like you said, flash versus substance. Now, the reason why I bought into that Onslaught cover is because it was real gold woven into it. And I was thinking, for the future, since it actually has a amount of gold up in it, that will be a worthwhile investment to hold on to it. Lo and behold, I got duped. That book is not worth $100, and I'll be quite surprised to find a few in dollar bins. And to be quite honest, because of a if I could say it in this word, a business partner of mine, I have a good stack of X-Men Onslaughts, the regular cover, that I could sell at any given time. And when I say a stack, we're talking about a stack that's more than like that big of X-Men Onslaughts that has never been circulated. But like I said, it all comes back down to understanding that fan base and understanding, does it have staying power? Yeah, the X-Men is going to be around for a long period of time, but what generation of X-Men story are you talking about? Because I know for a fact that the newer X-Men stuff, the fan base for that is really, really small. The older fans like myself, we're going mad to it because you kind of took away from what we were accustomed to and the stories that we loved about that particular title. It would take a lot of the newer fans to make us rabid again for this current rendition of X-Men, because they have to get us to understand why the newer stuff is great. We see the newer stuff as a departure for what it was. Now, what doesn't help is that because we're in a day and age that the bigger publishers are now allowing their marketing department control more of the content of these stories, it becomes a major big problem here. Now, granted, a lot of people, love using quote unquote buzzword terms. I don't. I don't. People who want to talk like, oh, these books are woke, these books are this, and these books are that. It's not about that. It's about the bigger companies not allowing the creative staff to tell good stories. The stories that are being told now are more like bullet point items. And if it happens to be a good story behind it, so be it. Even if you go and get a legendary writer that had worked on something that was brilliant in the past, they don't have the same level of control, or they have too much control over the story where nobody can ring them back in. This is why, a lot of times, Parallax, who is a avid member of the chat here, always keeps pulling me back from the cliff talking about editors. This is why editors are so important. Editors help kept up with continuity. They kept up with a lot of other stuff. Then, did I dot my I's? Did I cross my T's? Did I make certain that I spoke in present tense as opposed to past tense or future present tense? They did more than just the grammatic work. They did a lot more than that here. And it was like Elaine saying ooh about I believe that was about the Onslaught gold cover here. And yeah, it's like, yeah, it's a delicate balance, staying true to the word, yet having it to sell. And to be quite honest, with it being the way that it is today, and this is why, I don't knock people like Don. You guys know Don that sometimes come into the chat here. Once him and I had that conversation that he was more of a cover collector, that he was more into the art, that light bulb in my head clicked. It was like, now it makes sense about why you buy the way that you buy. If you like what you're seeing, especially within covers and what's in the interior art, yeah, you're going to, go to it, hook, line, and sinker. And I get that. But the thing about it is, nowadays they're catering more towards him than me, who wants a good meat and potato story. Again, I'm not against horror stories, but to me, most of them are like, man, it's like, you're not innovating. You're not doing anything that hasn't been done before. And this is why I've seen a lot more people who are truly into horror going back to like the golden age to buy those horror books from way back when, because they probably are a lot scarier and probably had a lot better story than what they're doing now. I believe what they're doing now is watered down. Yep, we editors is pretty cool. And then Aaron's laughing at Elaine. But it goes to show here. It's like, the more I hear about people, it's like, oh, I'm sick, sick of capes and tights. It's like the reason why you're sick of capes and tights is because of the simple fact that they're constantly reinventing the wheel. There's no longer continuity. And then the one thing that was being rumored as of right now that made me angry with DC is that after this KO event, they're talking about relaunching the DC universe again. I'm up here like, why? Why is marketing doing this so often? Why are we relaunching mainstay trademarks and IPs over and over and over again to hope to catch Prometheus fire for new readers? And I use the word Prometheus fire because of the simple fact that I believe that is the type of fire that does not get put out with the use of water. It actually burns on water. So I use that term specifically because it's not about just catching lightning in a bottle. It's about catching something bigger and better that cannot be extinguished. You got years and years and years and years of Batman fans, but what are they doing now? The older ones are collecting the older stuff. The younger ones are, hoping that the newer books catch on because of the artwork. And it's weird because if the people who are the poor man's art collector, and excuse me for using that term for those who collect comics based upon art. I don't mean it in a derogatory fashion as a poor man's art collector. The reason I use the term poor man's art collector is because it's easier for you guys to get the artwork through getting one issue than to track down especially in this digital age of creating comics, the actual Bristol boards or the actual physical one-of-one artwork that was used to create it in the first place, let alone paying the exorbitant price of maybe like, $80 to like $250, $300 just for one art print. So that's what I mean that I'm not trying to put you guys down. I understand the cost. So that's the reason why I say using the term poor man art collector. So like I said, I don't knock people, period. That's the reason why I always explain the terms that I use here for people who understand. There's no hatred towards what I'm trying to tell you is about education. So yay, like her chosen. Yep. Werewolves are fun. And looking at werewolves and stuff like that here. And that's kind of like the thing about horror back then. Horror has an element of scary plus thrilling. There is something almost detective like in determining what is making it truly scary. I believe that's the part of the aspect of modern horror that is missing, and the reason why I'm going meh. To me, gore, jump scares, stuff like that, that's not what makes something scary. Jump scares is scary because lack of information and just not being aware. But not being aware sometimes gets you killed, but a lot of times it doesn't. It may give you a quick little lesson, and then next thing you know, you want to be prepared for it. But what makes things scary is trying to figure out a way to make something that should be in your control out of your control. Meaning a good horror story. You can watch a person do everything right and everything goes against them. I don't know why I'm thinking about Dorian Gray, the story of Dorian Gray. Everything went, he made the deal with the devil and everything went right with his life. Lives what I consider several lifetimes. And one unfortunate natural mistake because of the fact that the individual that you fall in love with did not know the secret behind the picture that you kept covered up. Here, honey, I found this, and I found. I was like, I found this, and this was like a really interesting picture. It's like, here, take a look at it, and your natural instinct is like, oh, what is that? Oh, and then dead. That makes a good horror story because, again, through his several lifetimes and all his dirty dealings and all this other stuff, that's what makes, to me, comics like Crime Does Not Pay, to me, more influential towards not only being a crime book, but it can also be horror. Because again, you're dealing with people who are committing mass murders and all this other stuff, and you're seeing it from the criminal's point of view. It's being told as, yeah, take the life of this person, that person, this person who is just so much of a louse, and they're doing this, and this, and they're showing all of this about why this low life of a criminal is slowly going to get his comeuppance. And then with someone, it was like, oh my goodness, they're doing all of these horror atrocities and everything. And it could be a horror book, but the end result sometimes ends so horrific for them that it could be a horror story. So, like I said, it's the understanding that fine line and everything between how to develop that world that you're telling your story in. Now, I know I covered a lot of stuff here, and I'm just up here more along the lines, as like I said, I don't like ranting here, but I'm also just trying to really provide feedback here. And my major concern now is being up early enough to bump into him again tomorrow morning or whatnot, just to make certain it's like, hey, I reviewed your book. Go and watch these 2 videos on my channel, and you understand what's going on and the feedback that we're giving to you here. And I want to make it perfectly clear to Mr. Simon, my review is not to be negative. I want you to really do well. You got something good here. Just like other people told me when I was about to give up Amazonia. Everybody kept looking at me like, you got something great here. Keep working on it. People will eventually come around to it. I believe people will come around to Sleeping Betty. You just have to develop it a little bit more. And the more you keep developing it, the better it's going to get. But for right now, my major gripe about Sleeping Betty is don't do 16 pages again. If anything, do 24. That gives you enough room and enough leeway, timing wise, to tell a better cohesive story from issue to issue here. It may cost you a little bit more money to get the book printed in the long run, or it may cost you more money with your artist. But storytelling wise, it will work out a little bit better for you here. And Aaron says, like, yeah, you're thorough with your critiques. Yeah, I try to be. I have to be. And you know, a lot of times people want me to go and do these critiques here, and when I really jump into it, I jump into that mindset of an editor. And being that, you know, I run the CGC studios and where I have produced other people's work, I have to take that mindset. I have told other writers, go back, think about your marketing plan. Well, people are saying that this reminds them too much of this. And it's like, well, what are you planning to do to make it less than that, where they can see your work as opposed to a bootleg version of this? A lot of them will scratch their heads and not get it. Others did. It only takes time. It takes time for them to really register why they have to do the extra legwork. It's not easy. That's why I said it's a rough road. It's never easy. It's always going to be rough. Yeah, that's why I love Netflix House of Usher. You know, things go horribly wrong at the point where they should be going right. Exactly. No, right now I'm not in give up, but my first, I would say my first 5 years with Amazonia was rough. And what made it worse is that when I started with Amazonia 1 and finally got to issue number 3, I also released, by the time I released issue number 3 of Amazonia, I had already did issues 1, 2, and 3 of AWF. At that time, AWF was selling hand over fist compared to Amazonia because everybody was able to digest AWF a lot easier than Amazonia for some reason. And because I was seeing low sales for Amazonia, I was ready to give up on it. I was really, it's like, I felt like people just don't like it. People are passing it up. Everybody loves the idea of the behind the scenes of a wrestling organization that was actually training superheroes. They kind of like that idea a little bit better. Maybe I'd go ahead and develop that and call it a day. And if it wasn't for that one meeting with John Storm, which was the co-founder of Comixology back then, I would have given up on Amazonia. Because when he made me aware, it's like, no, these are the type of critiques that you need to have here. Oh, and by the way, I'm not just here because of the simple fact that you're a part of our family now. I'm here because, oddly enough, there are people in our company that love what you did. And that encouraged me. Me being a no name, having a company like Comixology, who's been dealing with Marvel, DC, and Image books on digital platforms, coming to me and saying, "There's people in the company that likes what you're doing with this work. You need to just get tighter on your lettering. You just need to get, the spacing and everything, correcting for this, that, and the other. You should be okay. Go ahead and keep telling your story." That one lesson taught me you never know who is truly paying attention to your work. And that's the key thing here that I want Mr. Simon to really understand here. Out of all the people that buys your book, you may never know who is truly paying attention and who is not. And that's the key thing here. Yeah, in other words, I'll bring back the Monday stream, but they will be on a new YouTube channel. Yeah, that. See, what you're doing here, Aaron, is rebranding. And the reason why you need to rebrand, because maybe, the Psychotronic squirt gun need to be specifically for your music, because you just dropped a brand new album. and people are coming out and looking at those videos where you talk about each and every track and giving them the history. Now, for people who don't know Aaron very well, his music reminds me of old school rock opera. Each track has a story behind it. He takes the time to break down that story. And a lot of times you can listen to the music and hear the breakdown of the story at the same time. That's the reason why I get why he's doing away with the Monday streams, or as he's putting it, rebranding it to a different channel. That way, those who love his music does not get confused. It makes sense. It makes very good business sense. So, don't feel bad about that. You just have to make certain that your audience know that the comic side is just going to get rebranded over here. Aaron, send me notifications so I can watch it. Okay, we'll let you know when I create the new channel, Elaine. Thank you. Anytime. Again, I can share stories about my journey all the time. My journey has never been easy. Especially when I released issue number 1 of Amazonia. And I was around other artists that looked down upon my work. You're not ready. And I'm up here like, no. The difference between what I'm trying to do and what you're trying to do is apples and oranges. Those who have been in my shoes and been in that struggle were the only ones that were encouraging me. Those who had other agendas kept trying to knock me down. I didn't see the comic book industry the way that they did. I was not trying to be a copycat. There's a reason I was not trying to be a copycat, because my story doesn't dictate it. The story I was telling was something that if I would have went to a Marvel and DC, they probably would have been laughing me out of their offices, because it didn't match up to the IPs that they had. The only way I would get my start was to do it by myself. Nothing wrong with that. Now, since I have started up and got a good footing and everything, and have worked with other artists that have worked with Marvel and DC, and I'm still doing the legwork on it, on a lot of this stuff. Now, those who were saying negative stuff about me now are looking back as like, hey, you got any work? Hey, can you help me out? A lot of times you have to just stay humble. Even to a degree where if one of those people who were poo-pooing your work, you have to be gracious enough to help them out. There's nothing wrong with that. There's always going to be a naysayer. There's always going to be somebody that says, you're not ready. There's always going to be somebody that says, you're too green for this. You just got to put your best foot forward and keep moving. And that's all that you can do here. Yeah, I had to keep things separated. I understood that from the very beginning, because like I said before, it's like, in a weird way, you're a storyteller too, just in a different medium. And because it's in a different medium, you probably have to keep things separated, like you said here. But again, my journey, your journey here, Aaron, it's not going to be Mr. Simon's journey here. He's embarked on his own thing. He has put other comics out there here. However, I kind of gathered that this is something that is unique, and this is kind of like the story that he wants to tell. My ultimate story that I want to tell, I don't think people are ready for it just as of yet. But people are up here it's like you need to write it. And up here it's like when the time comes, I'm going to put it out there. And when it gets out there, it's going to open people's eyes to a certain degree. Reason being is that it's not going to be the stereotypical capes and type superhero. I don't know, maybe I'm coming from that age where stories still supposed to inspire, but stories also still supposed to put a mirror up to you to help you look at self. And I think that's one of the reasons why people love Amazonia. Because sometimes, like I said, because it's a woman-led title, those who read it either begins to understand a lot of things that they didn't understand before, or they've been through that journey that at least has been on in some form or some fashion, and they just relate. Again, I had, to be quite honest, issue 5 was not, I don't believe it was a fluke. Issue 5 of Amazonia was told at the right time and in the right spot for this first story arc, for you to understand the difficulty it is for Elisa to be back in Angel Falls. Just like I never released the Free Comic Book Day comic for AWF. Because if I did that, Elaine is going to kill me. I have told maybe 3 other people that story. Ironically enough, one person was like, that's okay. That's decent. The other 2, who happened to be women, cried. I believe it is a very beautiful story to tell. And it will be one of those things that I can honestly say, I wish more women would have this understanding of why fathers are the way that they are. But like I said, certain stories have to be told in its time. That's just the way that it is. Yeah, yes, you're the person, yes, the person you just critique, at least he did something, have wants to truly learn. Yeah, I try to learn. People don't realize how often I try to go back to the older stuff and learn from it. Sitting up here doing case studies of people like Will Eisner and understanding how facial expressions can change the meaning of a lot of things in a story. Having, friends such as John Celestri, who really is harping on understanding body positioning and body gestures change the overall impression in a story when it comes to comics and visual. Having people in my corner like Robert Roach, who kind of took me up under his wing while I was in California for the very first couple of times at San Diego Comic-Con, introducing me to a lot of the bigger wigs who have been there and done that, and was looking at what I'm trying to do and saying, keep going, son. You got something there. They don't know me from Adam, but from the few pages that I showed them, from the few pages of of where I worked on Bristol board pages while I was there. They saw something. They helped me correct some of the mistakes that I was making, and they're saying, this is how you get past it. Keep going. So when people ask me, hey, critique this, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I'm also coming from a place to be like, hey, I've been there. One of the key things that I never had happen to me here, I never asked Neal Adams to critique my work. But the one thing that I did get from Neal Adams, who did not know me from jack squat, from the few times that he see me actually exhibit at C2E2, he literally told me the one key secret to sell more comic books. Don't worry about what's in the book. It will sell itself. Worry about the stories that led you to make those books. Tell people those stories. That would make them more interested if they really are truly interested in your work. People love the stories behind why things are made, more so than telling them what you actually make. That stuck with me. And that, that's coming from one of the legends who don't know me from Adam. And the only reason I got that because I asked him at the, end of one of the days here. It's like, hey, I'm getting crucified as far as selling here. And it's like, no, it's like, don't worry about how things look at the table and this, that, and the other. Put your best work out there for the display. It will sell itself. But people are really there more so for the stories behind the work. So if you could tell people about that, you could go a long way here. She's laughing here. You're not evil. You're not evil. People would look at Elaine and be like, oh, she's going to be a nice and friendly editor. Think again. If you're not able to hold your own writing, she's going to rip you a new one. Why? Because when she had to do her writing, she had people in her corner that ripped her a new one each and every time. And trust me, when it comes down to writing, if you got any type of an ego, you can't handle people critiquing your stuff, you can't handle people telling you that you're wrong, you're not meant for writing. Simple and plain. You're not meant for it. You're not meant for it. Same thing with art. Well, I was just say same thing for art. Same thing for working for other people in art. If you can't take critiques, if you can't take redos, get out of it. Just work for self. You'll be a lot happier. Anyway, that's an hour 30 minutes. I think I ran out of everything to say as far as the critique is concerned here. But like I said, the whole purpose of going back over what we talked about on Thursday was more so about getting Mr. Simon to understand the tough road that it is in comics, especially from the creative standpoint here. Now, mind you, I have watched other videos today talking about the collecting aspect of it, but today, after rereading the book again, it's like, you know what? I wasn't completely fair on Thursday. I had to make that one addendum, but I still stick to where I stand here. The major mistakes was we don't know much about the city that they're in, whether it's a big town, small town, or something like that. And we explain why the relationships are the way that it was. You didn't give us a big enough cliffhanger to make us want to get the next issue here. Even though you did have a cliffhanger as far as the partner not knowing how he know if it would have been a female. I still felt that, the page before, the final scene where she finally killed the last person and then the detective comes running up and it's like, oh, I was tied up. I didn't get to see what happened. So he doesn't really realize how much of a mass murderer she really is as of yet. And then the reconciliation, because technically he witnessed her murdering the other perp that time where she attacked him. There's still some reconciliation that's there, but all of that I mentioned there is really more about the pacing of the story. It doesn't have enough time to marinate where those things can be reconciled in a nice little pretty bowl beyond that here. Now, I did like the explanation in the hospital, but I also believe that explanation could have been met with more scrutiny by the detective. That's why I love the fact that when you did the scene where he calls her up, it's like, okay, I'm ready, let's do this. He witnesses firsthand what it's like to travel the way that she travels in dreams, and it makes it so much better in the long run as far as the storytelling is concerned. But going to a 24-page book will help, because that will give you the extra pages to really iron out and flesh out those things that can be sticking points where people would be like, that's not a natural reaction, or yeah, that's a little bit too convenient that he's accepting, that the detective is accepting this, or it's a little bit too convenient that everything is okay, because there should be more conflict that is there. Just those nuggets to think about here. It's like, yeah, those last stitches finally healed. Thank you, Aaron. I hope people are really enjoying this on the replay when it's fully done and over with, and people could come back and let it marinate and everything. Like I said, with this particular channel, I don't know who's really watching. I kind of wish more people would comment and have more of a dialogue, or even show up for a live show where we can have dialogue that way. But in the bigger scheme of things, I don't really talk bad about the industry itself, but there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems both on the collecting side and the creative side here. I just hope that people get to that point where they see the middle ground. They see that middle ground. Doesn't matter what team you're on, if you're Team Slab or Team Raw, if you're on Team I want books the old school way versus team hey, the marketing people are right, we need to get younger people in by doing X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter. As long as the love for comics and the contents and the stories are done well, we all win in the end. That's the major thing here. I guess there's not wait, hold on. Yeah, staying true to oneself and very slow to something will grow like a YouTube channel. Exactly. And that's another story. Some people don't realize I do have a gaming channel, and my gaming channel has more subscribers than this. It's definitely up under a different it's up under a different account, but I don't, like I said, over here, the subscriber count is low. Over there, I'm like close to like 500 subscribers. Here it's like I barely got 100. But even if that, I don't think all my subscribers came back as of yet. But nevertheless, it is what it is. So on that note, don't forget to turn back your clocks at 2 in the morning here, because at 2 o'clock in the morning it's really 1 o'clock, because why? We fell back. Daylight savings. Except for those people who are in Arizona, ignore what I say, because you don't do daylight savings. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. If you're everywhere else on the East Coast, well, actually, the East Coast people got 15 minutes. So I gave you 15 minutes of your Saturday back here. And good night to you, Elaine. As I always say, live life, grow, and be well. And we see you here next Saturday. What I'll talk about, I have no idea here, but hopefully I get away from talking about comic book investments and all this other stuff that a lot of people are up here talking about here. The whole drama with grading companies and all this other stuff. Uh, you know, I guess sometimes negativity sells, but in the bigger scheme of things, collect what you love. Collect what you love. Protect it the way that you see fit, whether if it be my lights and boards, regular bags and boards, or slabbing. But the key thing is enjoy comics and enjoy your hobby the way that you love enjoying the hobby. There's no one right way. And don't let anybody else tell you that there's one right way. And that's pretty much the message for this evening. So until next week, bye.